Good afternoon. The time is now 3:30. We'll open the Planning Commission for the City of Norwood. Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Present.
Mayor Schneider, Mrs. Sickinger,
Present.
Mr. Hockney,
Present.
Mr. Sewer.
Present.
Moving on to item B, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to amend or approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mrs. Town?
We need amendments to the agenda.
What amendments do we need to the agenda?
So in item 1, it lists the code as 1155.13, which actually is preliminary code. That needs to be 1155.15.
Okay.
In, it did not print out.
Number 3,
Do you have it, Ralph?
yeah, number 3 should, this is, Auditor's Book 651, page 19, parcel 02026. It should be 0206. There's an extra 0. And on item number 4, the same number was input at 02026, and it should read 0206.
Minor amendments.
Mrs. Sickinger, would you like to amend your motion?
I will amend that motion to 1155.15.
And on item 3, that would be amending the number to 0206, and same amendment for item number 4.
Correct.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Moving on to item C, approval of minutes. August 7th, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve or amend the minutes?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes for August 7th, 2024.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Moving on to item D1, public hearing. Well, we should have amended it slightly further. It says Tyson Hermes, but I believe it is Eric Hermes of Hermes Construction, representing Gaslight Properties, owners of 2.503 acreage, property identified as 1631 Sherman Avenue, Norwood, Ohio, 45212, Hamilton County Auditor Book 651, page 0049, parcel 0073, located within a neighborhood business zoning district with planned unit development overlay. Mr. Hermes, on behalf of Gaslight Properties, is submitting the final PUD plan, section 1155.15, for a major planned unit development to build a 108-unit apartment complex. Mr. Hermes? If you would, please raise your right hand and swear after me that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
My name is Eric Hermes. My address is 6163 Cabin Creek East Drive in Cold Spring, Kentucky. And today I'm here to present the project that's being developed by Gaslight Properties, Sherman Oaks Apartments. And I'm actually here representing my brother. My brother's been the one who's been the key person on this project. Our company is going to be doing the construction work on the project. And then if possible, if there's questions at the end that I'm going to struggle with, I would ask that I could just put Tyson on the phone to answer those questions. Basically, this slideshow is pretty much the same thing that was approved by the Planning Commission on July 3rd. And there's been very little changes. I think the only differences on this slide presentation is that some more detail and answers to questions that the Planning Commission had. Okay, and moving forward, The goals of the development is to provide affordable workforce housing, provide housing for the aging population, improve the pervious area of the site, make the buildings architecturally appealing, create usable outdoor spaces, create low impact on the community services, utilize sustainable, energy efficient, viable green solutions, and create a connection to the Norwood Loop. The size of the project is 2.52 acres. The site is designed with 36% of the area is pervious, which is an improvement over the existing development for the Fun Factory, which is 14% pervious. There are two buildings, 54 units each, a total of 108 units, 54 single bedroom and 54 two bedrooms, so a total of 162 bedrooms and 143 parking spaces. Each building is 4 stories with a half basement, 67,556 square feet per building, and that is a footprint of 14,956 square feet. There are 6 handicap parking spaces, 6 ADA apartments, and of those, 2 have wheelchair access, and this is to help serve the aging population. All units have access without stairs. This is a benefit for parents pushing strollers and for the aging population. This plan shows the ADA parking spaces at the entrances. Please note we have also added private fire hydrant as a request of the fire department. I don't know if you can see the parking spaces on that plan, but it's at the entrances of the building. Now, Gaslight plans to build the project all in one phase. The traffic impact study that was performed on the site by SHA Engineering was favorable and categorized the development as low traffic trip generation. This slide shows the floor plans, and the floor plans are designed for young professionals, young families, and the aging population. The top floor plan is the single bedroom option, and the lower floor plan is the 2-bedroom option. Now, the government defines housing as affordable when 30% or less of the income is spent on rent or utilities. Gaslight will be offering the apartments at and below what is considered affordable for people who make up 80% of the average median income in Hamilton County. This site exceeds Norwood's open space requirements, and the outdoor spaces include a variety of lawns, paver patios, seating areas, swings, and water features. We've included a detail of the slender silhouette sweet gum tree that is proposed between the buildings and the street. We plan to use sustainable materials where feasible, like energy-efficient windows, fixtures, insulation, appliances, and HVAC systems. Gaslight plans to promote recycling to the residents and wants to encourage a low impact on utility services. Ultimately, this helps keep the tenants' costs low. Since the last time, we have included a photometric plan for your review. We have included a sign concept. These building-mounted signs would be located at each end of the development adjacent to the entry drives. A memorandum of understanding has been shared with Norwood detailing Gaslight Properties' intent to donate 7 feet of the east side of the site to Norwood. This will promote access from Sherman Avenue to Upper Millcrest Park and help complete the Norwood Loop. In summary, Sherman Oaks will provide affordable housing to the workforce as well as young families and the aging population. We will be improving the pervious area of the site while making the buildings architecturally appealing. We will utilize sustainable, energy-efficient, viable green solutions. We are presenting a low traffic volume. And finally, we are creating a connection to the Norwood Loop. Finally, I'm happy to entertain questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now offer an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak in favor of the development.
When do you want me to give my report?
As soon as we give folks an opportunity to talk, I will come back for staff reports. Anybody to speak in favor of the development? Seeing none, anyone to speak in opposition to the development? Anyone to speak in opposition to the development? Seeing none? Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Powers. As stated before, the applicant is asking for a plan commission to accept the final submittal for the PUD. Their scope included a 4 to 5-story apartment building. Well, originally said, we had calculated 108 dwelling units. You said 160 something?
No, I think I said it's 108.
I believe it was 160 parking spaces.
Oh, 160 parking spaces, okay.
160 beds, I thought.
Okay.
That might be.
I thought it was bad.
Spaces with 6 ADA accessible, you have 160, we had 147 when I calculated them. Parking spaces with 6 ADA accessible spaces, walking paths along the east side of the property, and open space area. We had meetings with the fire department, building department, and public works, and their comments are as follows. The fire department is telling that there's not enough pressure to supply 100 PSF at the top floor of the apartments, and the owner will need to install the fire pumps as needed to guarantee this pressure. Building department, open spaces, under section 1155.15, final plan approval. They are gonna need to, number 3 says, a title guarantee or rider of the existing policy showing the legal descriptions of the land which has been set aside for open spaces and shows appropriate restrictions, limits, and the use of such land to open spaces to the restrictions in perpetuity, guaranteeing owners and occupants of the area to be develop a right and easement of the use in such open spaces. We have not yet received that one yet. ADA parking spaces must meet the latest ADA guidelines. Community development as approved per preliminary submissions. Public works, there's an old storm sewer running through the property. This storm sewer will need to be protected from any movement due to construction and building settlements. They want to allow for 10 to 12 feet clearance on all sides of the ground, at ground level, to allow for any repairs to the underground water, sewer, etc. Details of piping and clean water must follow the City of Cincinnati requirements. Staff recommends that you accept the PUD final submittal with the following caveats. Have the owner supply water pressure calculations to the top floor of the building, provided that there's at least 100 pounds of PSF at that level. Otherwise, show the fire pumps in the construction documents. Draw up a title guarantee per section 1155.15 and submit it to the Planning Commission and Council for approval. And comments and concerns are addressed prior to the issuance of the building permits.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Skelly, any additional?
No, there was a memo prepared for myself. We had conditions provided for when the preliminary PD was prepared. As you heard with the presentation, the applicant followed with regards to the preparation of the lighting plan, details for signage, They provided details for the turning radius into site. They provided additional hydrant. There's a few more. And beyond that, I provided a couple more conditions as part of the final PUD. And that's it. But at least for my end, I'm supporting the approval. So.
Mr. Hermes? Any concerns about those conditions for approval?
I don't believe so, no.
Great, thank you. Offer one more opportunity for anybody to speak against the development or in favor of the development. Seeing none, I will offer a motion to accept the PUD final submittal with the following caveats. Have the owner supply the water pressure calculations of the top floor of the buildings, proving that there is at least 100 PSF, otherwise show the fire pumps and the construction documentation. Draw up a title guarantee per section 1155.15 and submit it to the Planning Commission and Council for approval. And address the comments and concerns as outlined by Mr. Wolf. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, pardon me, I want to make one amendment to that. Endorse it as modified and recommend it to the Norwood City Council. Would you amend your second?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving to item D2. Mick Oaks, associate developer with PLK Communities, is submitting an application to expand the existing 18.673 acreage, 4590 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio, 45212, Factory 52 Planned Unit Development, Phase 1 and Phase 2, now comprised of Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0019, and parcel 0127, 0206, and 0210 to include properties known as 4500 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio, 45212, 6.48 acreage Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, parcel 0019, page 0127, located within M2 Heavy Manufacturing Zoning District, and 2.839 acreage Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0030, parcel 0206, located within Neighborhood Business District, Business Zoning District. Mr. Oaks, if you would, please raise your right hand, repeat after me. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Floor is yours.
Mick Oaks with PLK Communities, MICKOAKES. Address is 5905 East Galbraith Road. Regarding item number 2, the incorporation of the Robertson parcel into the Phase 2 PUD. We believe that this parcel, with the inclusion of it, is streamlining the cohesiveness of the entire Phase 2 PUD. It's an opportunity for council to have some back and forth with us and some dialogue getting out in front of it. This parcel is zoned NBD, so by right, our proposed use would be applicable with some minor variances to it. Therefore, we hope that it is included into the Phase 2 PUD. However, it is, the proposed uses will be allowed through NBD. So I'll be happy to answer any questions on item number 2.
Mr. Oaks, this request is for the, what we would consider like the major piece of multicolor where the large factory building was, but also the parcels to the south, is that correct?
Yes.
Questions from the commissioners?
I'm sorry, no, would you repeat, this is the proposed area south of Robertson?
They're proposing to include two different
Right.
pieces.
There's a parcel north and a parcel south.
Yeah, the parcel north of Robertson included that into the Factory 52 PUD, but also the parcel to the south on the south side of
And
Robertson.
that's what this one is specifically. I had a hard time following this item, which, this is strictly the southern parcel
No, they're asking for both parcels to be included.
in this
the-
item too?
Yes. They're not?
No, I didn't think so either.
You have this map right here? Guys?
Yeah, help out, because I,
I sent in a map with your, if you do not have that, I have extra ones here.
It was in the first page. We got it.
Because I knew it would be kind of difficult for you guys trying to interpret what was actually happening.
They're putting it on the screen.
Oh,
There's
There we go.
basically 4 areas of Factory 52 in the PUD that they're going after. And this one is on the southern part of Robertson Avenue. And it's put in there as agenda item number 2, if you look. That's the only thing that's for agenda item number 2.
This also includes 6.48 acres.
Well, that's item number 2, 5, and 6. It gets a little confusing. So when we
Yes.
separated it out, we had the original area that was part of Phase 1 that you had approved. Then we had, they were asking to include in the PUD the adjacent area of multicolor, and then, which is on the northern side of Robertson. And then they also wanted the southern portion of Robertson as another. So what we tried doing was breaking out all these little pieces, make it a little easier to understand. And if you rejected one or denied one, you weren't gonna deny it all, because they wanted to originally combine it all into one. And so we broke it down with the approval of
Well-
PLK.
Chairman.
And that is still our,
I'm correct?
You're correct.
Okay.
yes. So the south parcel of Robertson, this one, agenda item number 2 is to include this parcel into the rest of the Phase 2 PUD parcel, shown adjacent to the original Factory 52 Phase 1, and also this parcel, the highway land that was shown in Phase 1 PUD.
Okay, so it is both parcels.
Yes.
To some degree, yes.
Yes. So item 2 is just adding these into the PUD, the zoning. That's what this is changing the zoning.
It's,
Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
So item 2 is not approving the planned unit development, it's approving the zoning of the planned unit development.
it's approving the land included in the zoning.
Yes.
PUD.
So we did apply for it all as one continuous PUD. It was recommended to us by staff to break it up into portions. If it's easier to combine them all sites into one, we're open to that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Based on my understanding of the city's zoning code, the parcels have to be contiguous in order to be included in a single PUD? With Mr. Wolf, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you were addressing that.
I think we'll need to address that as part of item 2 here.
Right.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Oakes? Thanks, sir. Offer an opportunity for anybody who would like to speak in favor.
Nicholas Lingenfelter with PLK Communities.
If you would, I have to swear you in.
Yes,
Do
sir.
you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, please
Thank
proceed.
you. Do I need to spell my name? All right, good, thank you. So I want to talk about item 2. So Mick was prepared to present everything in order, I think because they're ordered here in reverse to you all, that's why it's been a little confusing. So he'll gladly come up and cover the entire PD the way we had submitted it, and if we need to break it up, maybe that might be a better way to do it. But what I want to talk about is the detached parcel. So there's 2 things to that parcel just to the south of Robertson. Let me see if I can go back on that one. Give me a second right there. So was owned by Multicolor Corporation. So this parcel right here, in 1970, when the highway went through, the highway department, the state seized part of the rear of their property. In return, the state gave them this southern parcel. It actually was a ramp access point that never was built. So this was all given to Multicolor, and it was all part of one purchase, one property owner that we acquired. This property itself is in the VAP filing. So the parcel today has a voluntary action plan with the Ohio EPA. That VAP agreement with the state EPA requires that these two parcels are always treated in tandem. So we can't split them off and have separate agreements. So what we were trying to do was attempt to make a contiguous look across all the sites, a contiguous standard, all your materials, everything else is the same. To what Mr. Oak said, we can build this area by right if we wanted to, but we thought it was actually better for the city to do it this way because you're guaranteed that we aren't gonna go to vinyl site and you're guaranteed that we're gonna do all these other things that we've already agreed to in our PUD. So to give one consistent look and kind of, it was our opinion that it all should be treated the same. We can break it apart. We don't have to approve it at all. But what our thought was to go ahead and push it forward this way. What the chairman said is correct, that Norwood's code does have a rule that says it must be a contiguous property. But the city has the right to give a notwithstanding ordinance. The notwithstanding ordinance can legally say, notwithstanding anything in our code, we understand that, but we also have a right to approve this. So you do have a right, if you wanted to, and you could probably cover that a little bit, but we were trying to put it as part of one development into one plan. If you don't want a part of it, that's fine, we don't have to have it in here, but we were trying to give consistent standards and trying to be a benefit, and it's kind of bit us a little bit on this one. But I just want to make sure I explained why it was what it was, and then Nick would gladly come to cover the whole development so you understand what's going on there. I think it was just presented out of order to you all, so. Thank
Could I
you.
ask a question?
Thank you.
No.
Yes.
What happens to your VAP agreement? I mean, if,
We are redoing it right now, so what happened, we still can't break it apart. But right now, it says anything on that parcel must be heavy manufacturing or light industrial. So what we've asked the state to do is, as you've seen where the building came down that we wanted to, we've had to go through pretty extensive testing to say all of this meets a residential standard or can meet a residential standard. So we will keep the same VAP agreement in place, but we're modifying it to allow for residential use.
so you won't lose the coverage that the
We won't
state
lose,
gives you?
yeah, we're just gonna add an additional layer that says we've done additional testing or we've done additional work to keep the VAP agreement in place. So it is, like I say, it's the same entity under the agreement, and we can't ever sell this off to somebody else because the VAP agreement does say no individual owner at any point. So that's why we've done the townhomes, but they're townhomes for rent because we're not allowed to sell them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Langenfeld? Thank you. Anyone to speak in favor of this item? Anyone to speak in favor of this item? Anyone to speak in opposition? Please come to the microphone. I'll have to swear you in as well. If you would, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So my first question is,
Mrs.
on
Bull.
this new.
Please state your name and your address for the court reporter.
Dana Bull, B-O-L-L, 3947 Ellesmere.
Thank you.
Norwood. So my first question is, how many units are on this new parcel to the south? And how many housing units were there before?
I don't believe there were any housing units there before. I'm not sure.
At the
Quickly.
dead end of, oh, I see. That is
This is currently a vacant parcel.
the one to the south.
That's correct. I
Okay.
think there's a parking lot on a portion of it.
Okay, so I can't see where the access, the driveway is. How do people get there?
That's on Beach.
Oh, I see, they enter on Beach.
It's next to what's
I see.
currently, I believe, the Buddhist temple.
Okay, okay. Well, my first, to me, this is a big surprise, and the fact that there are no people from that neighborhood here, is kind of alarming. I think if they knew that this was afoot, they would probably be here. And so I think, first of all, time is needed so that neighbors and the council person for Ward 3 can take a look at this and kind of harvest everybody's opinions. So that's my first comment on that. Secondly, well, of course, this new piece to me is a huge surprise. I mean, I came here today thinking we were going to talk about the multicolor site, and I did go over the drawings, but of course, it was a mountain of drawings. And so I feel like this whole thing needs some review because, you know, in January, we had a really incredible design lab, and citizens had a lot of commenting about bike access, pedestrian, and bike infrastructure. And so I feel like none of the ideas and solutions from Stantec are showing up in this plan. So my number one concern is that there is no bike infrastructure. It's all oriented for cars. And so as someone who likes to walk over to Factory 52 and walk home, draw your own conclusions, I'm thinking, well, you know, it's not increasing a favorable and dignified experience for a pedestrian. So I had hoped that by now we'd be talking about, you know, we talked about using that wonderful stone arch to the back, and that would be embedded into some of these parking plans, and I'm not seeing it. So as somebody who wants to walk there, I guess I've got to walk through a parking lot to get to the gather-all to see my friends. I don't know. So that's one comment. And, you know, relevant to this whole access thing, there's the concept that, you know, Factory 52 is wonderful now because they have all these wonderful events, and so they're always drawing you there. And of course, we have all these options because we can go to Victory Park, we can go to Factory 52, and, you know, it's like, you know, an embarrassment of riches. So what happens in a cul-de-sac when things start to slow down or become a little undesirable? So if Factory 52 sells to somebody, they quit having the events, then what do we have? And then it's all closed off. So, you know, I like the idea of having bike access or pedestrian access that we can walk that isn't like on a street. So that could be from Robertson, that could be, you know, from Leslie or Ida, I don't know. I think that this is I'm hoping that this is just a start. The only other comment is I'm seeing a lot of what's called capping. I think capping might be a solution here, and that is basically kind of what they've done at the banks, where you add real estate by going over top of a highway. So at Robertson, if there were a way to expand that so that we did have more pedestrian and bike access, you know, that would be a great solution at Wesley or Forest. I don't know, it seems like kind of a missed opportunity. I don't know if you're aware that there's a group of people that want to do a Duck Creek bike trail, and of course the Duck Creek is all through here. So I know that's kind of rambling. I'm a little surprised, not prepared. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Mr. Wolf?
Yes, thank you. Staff report. Let's see, the findings. The applicant is asking for the planning commission to incorporate the two multicolored sites into the Factory 52 PUD Phase 2. I'm referring to the attached plan, which is this plan. The multicolor site was not part of the original Factory 52 PUD submission and approved. The multicolor site comprises of two independent footprints, the first one on the north side of Robertson Avenue and the second one on the south side of Robertson Avenue. Section 1155.05, area density and lot regulations. All land within this development shall be contiguous in that it shall not be divided or segmented by any limited access highway or tract of land other than streets of way for pipeline or electric transmission lines, not owned by the developer in a planned unit development. These two sites, or this one on the south, is not contiguous to be part of a PUD. The first site, north of Robertson Avenue, is continuous to Factory 52, while the second site on the south, Robertson, is not. The second site also has a residential buffer that makes this site a standalone site and not capable of being part of Factory 52 PUD per section 115505. Surrounding neighbors currently have not addressed their concerns about the multicolored site because it was not part of the original PUD. This is the first time multicolor has been presented to the Planning Commission for review to be part of this PUD. The staff recommends, and this includes fire, police, and all the other people that were involved, there were 3 recommendations that the Planning Commission should consider: denying the multicolored site into Factory 52, the original PUD, allow the contiguous site north of Robertson Avenue to be part of the Factory PUD Phase 2, and disallow the second site south of Robertson as part of the Factory 52 based upon section 115505. Have the applicant apply for a PUD for the site south of Robertson. Planning Commission needs to review the other items within the agenda before ruling on this recommendation. Having the applicant apply for 2 PUDs for multicolor sites that will separate each one into its own PUD based on section 115505. And the reason I put it in there that they have to review it, because we do have a lot of concerns from life safety for the contiguous multicolored site. And if you do accept the one on the southern part, there will be some life safety issues as well from the fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Skelly?
I don't really have anything beyond what you just heard. Maybe just to make things easier for the Planning Commission and for the audience, I view this, at least for that item 2, as essentially a zoning ordinance map change. So what the developer is asking the city is essentially to consider 6.4 acres and the 2.8 acres as a planned unit development. So we have the original Factory 52 under a M2 with a PUD overlay. This is zoned the same thing, industrial without the PUD. This is a neighborhood business district without a PUD. And as you heard, the intent, as the developer said, is to have the whole thing considered as one. There has been points raised that in the ordinance right now, in order for that to occur, this would have to be contiguous with this. My understanding is that PLK does not own any of these properties along the south side here. Personally, I believe, and again, I think there's been discussion in the last 8 to 12 months about potentially having these sites included with the PUD overlay. There's some benefit in doing that, but definitely we've been discussing the multicolored lands to the south and to the north are completely different kettle of fish altogether because of both design issues, transportation issues, zoning issues, and it just becomes a matter of how comfortable Planning Commission or staff are with doing that. Obviously, by holding off until the city staff get more assurances, it gives us a lot more leverage. At the same time, just doing the zoning map change at this point and not having anything related to development yet has some merit just to move the process along. As you've heard, there's no one here from that neighborhood, nor have we heard anything from the local councilor. So that could at least allow the process to continue and tease out any issues that could be forthcoming that we weren't aware of or relevant to the consideration of the zoning map change.
Thank you. Questions or discussion from commissioners?
Yes, I have a question. I drove down today and I noticed that there were, I believe, 18 homes in the little corner Buddhist church. And that is such a tight street. I don't know how that's gonna be pulled off. Would it make sense if, I feel like if the residents knew about this, they would probably be here. Would it make sense to pause, put out a notice and let the residents have the opportunity to understand what's going on, and maybe they could explain the plans and work through all of this instead of,
They were noticed within 200 feet of the property.
really? I'm surprised.
It's a question, Carrie, was this the specific language in the notification? Because I had a hard time understanding it, even with the maps, so I'm just being very, I hear what she's saying, and to me, if I were a resident, and I just read that without the associated adjacent maps, it would be kind of hard to understand.
I condensed it to where it was adding to PUD and then PUD modifications
Right.
for the whole thing. Because that wouldn't fit on the postcard.
I got it. No,
And there were 5 of them.
Mr. Moore, would you address the contiguous and non-contiguous issue for us from the law department?
Thank you. Keith Moore, Law Director. I honestly don't know how we do a PUD over land that's not zone PUD. So as Mike was saying, I think we need to rezone it. I think you could do a development agreement that would cover these two sites and essentially accomplish the same things. I'm not aware of we're gonna, what was that, Nick? It was like a notwithstanding, I'm not familiar with that, so. But my thought would be that this is a lot all at once, and passing anything today would probably not be a good idea, especially with all the requests in the staff report. And I'll say that I drive down Robertson every day through the new stoplight, which is fun. And the idea of the traffic study for that is really, really gonna be important, I think, to cover those new entrances onto Robertson, so. But as far as can we do it? I mean, the code is clear, it's gotta be contiguous, unless you're gonna do a separate one. I'm still trying to figure out how you do a PUD over land that's not zoned for PUD, to expand it beyond that, and that I'm not really sure off the top of my head what the legal basis of that would be.
So you're saying that before getting to what's in item 2, there should be a request to rezone the multicolor parcels to a PUD? Is that?
It would make sense to me. I mean, in theory, you could pass a PUD plan. Here's a final plan for a PUD, but if there's land that's not within that's not zoned PUD, I'm not sure, 10 years from now, whoever owns the land, assuming PLK decides, we want to do something different, it doesn't comply with the PUD on those two chunks, I don't know if they would have an argument to say that, well, we don't need to go through PUD for that, or get that kind of approval, because it's not zoned for that, regardless of what is in the PUD that's been approved. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's ever come up in case law, off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you. And so that, for me, would be kind of the concern, to have we're gonna have this approval of a plan based on the code, when the code doesn't actually apply to those areas, so. But I think you could accomplish exactly the same things through a development agreement, kind of rephrase, at least for the multicolor sites. And I think if you had it within, as one big PUD that covered all of it, with a separate agreement that said, here's the deal, is everybody's bound by what's in the terms of this PUD approval, that would, I think, would cover us. But technically, no, I don't think you could do a PUD on our code. I mean, the notwithstanding I've never heard of, and I'm not sure what legal effect that would have 10, 15 years from now if there was some other proposal for the site.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Moore? Appreciate it. Discussion, questions from the commissioners?
I guess the one question I do have is if this is about zoning, wouldn't that open up the south side to be able to open as retail as well in that area? Versus just the townhomes that are proposed now?
I believe doing if an PUD overlay was placed on this, it would stay a neighborhood business district zone, which does allow for some commercial. So the way it's presently zoned allows for some commercial, not just the townhomes. But the PUD would allow it to go through that typical process whereby we can approve things other than the townhomes and approve that as part of a larger plan. So it wouldn't create a new zoning classification altogether, it would create that overlay. Mr. Lingenfelter, you look like you have something you want to say.
Yeah, I'd rather withdraw it, because right now we can build this by right. All we were trying to do was streamline it and make it easy. We don't need special approvals to build this with neighborhood business district. So if we just withdraw it, that's fine. We were trying to make it easier for everyone, and it feels like this kind of went the wrong direction. We can build the plan on that site with no additional approvals. So again, we were just trying to put our PUD standards and other requirements in place. If everyone doesn't want it, that's fine. We'll build it as it is and we'll move on. I'm not trying to make this more difficult, so, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lingenfelter, if I could ask one clarifying point. Apologize, I'll let you walk all the way back. When you say that, are you making that in reference to the 2.839 acres?
The southern parcel. So the southern parcel is zone neighborhood business district, can do commercial, can do retail. We can do just about anything we wanted on there.
Yeah.
So the way it's written is pretty vague, and that's what I'm saying, like, we were trying to put the PUD to put a set of standards in place that were consistent across all the things that we own.
So-
Mr. Moore's comment, we can cover that in a development agreement. I'd rather not have a PUD put on here without an approved set of rules, because you devalued my property. So I'd rather withdraw the request and build it by right than have a PUD with no set of rules approved.
Okay.
If we want to approve the set of rules, great, we've given the standard, we'll build exactly what we have. And actually, to the comment, if we didn't build this, we'd have to come back and get approval if we went to retail. So we're actually making it tougher on ourselves, but we just wanted a consistent set of rules. So, again, I'd rather withdraw than have a set of, a PUD laid on my property that's going to devalue it.
Okay. Does the request still stand, though, to add the northern portion into the Factory 52?
Absolutely does, because
Okay.
it's a consistent, I mean, all of your sewers, infrastructure, so the northern parcel was part of the Langdon Tract, which was a 30-acre parcel that was built for us. So like our Kenilworth is a shared road between the two properties. The city's development agreement has a shared sewer on Kenilworth. So it was shared, so if you don't put them together, you own half a sewer, congratulations. Like, I don't think that's what we're just talking about. I think if we don't put them together, though, that doesn't make sense at all. We also had just approved a preliminary, so what, for phase 2 anyway. So everything in phase 1, the way it was approved was, we did it as preliminary with no final, just on the first couple buildings, and we finalized out each building as we went. Now what we're doing is saying, okay, phase 2, we actually know what it's going to be now. So if you look at the original drawings that we had, there was office building, hotel, parking garage, literally no green space. And we said, this is what phase 2 is going to be, but we really don't know, we'll be back. Technically, that preliminary PUD has expired. So it isn't even valid anymore. So if you look at it, you can look at it as, okay, well, I've got a new preliminary PUD with final elements that we're approving, because obviously we want to get started on the multicolor redevelopment as quickly as possible, and understand that we want to get those roads in by spring so we can start getting the traffic flow corrected as quickly as possible. Can't do that when they have tied together infrastructure without them being part of the same approval package. So if the parcel of south is withdrawn, so be it, we'll build it by right. Everything to the north needs to be looked at as one parcel because all of your infrastructure is tied together, all of your detention. It is actually contemplated in the development agreement and the TIF that ultimately these are tied together if you look at the original documents as well. So.
Thank you. Discussion? Okay.
Does that modify the agenda?
It would modify, yes, this item. So that would, the request from Mr. Lingenfelter is to remove the 2.839 acres from item number 2. If I understood Mr. Moore correctly, he has concerns about approving item 2 without a previous zoning change, map amendment having been put in place. Is that correct?
It's really a question of how valid, like, the Planning Commission Council can pass the PUD, preliminary and final plans. The question is if anybody at some point challenges that for whatever reason. I'm not sure how valid it is. That, oh, there's an argument to be made that, well, no, this whole PUD plan that was approved is based on nothing because there's no zoning that requires the PUD approval at all. And that's kind of just from a legal perspective.
Mrs. Town?
So when we were looking at all of this, the proper way you were saying would have been to have added another application to do the map amendment and make that a PUD overlay, and then apply to include that into the original PUD?
If you're really going to do the process that, for example, I mean, if somebody submits a PUD plan for,
Correct.
my neighborhood,
You're correct.
right, there's no overlay. So, council, we can approve it. I'm not sure technically what it means. If the goal is to, I'm not sure if the goal is for the developer to say, okay, is to make a statement that all of this is going to match, it's going to fit together with the broader whole Factory 52 project, then that's it's perfectly fine, I guess, to go ahead and do that. If the reason is to, we want to, be able to get to a use that isn't allowed by the underlying zoning, which is sometimes PUDs are this is why it's really cool to do a PUD, because, okay, it's zoned M2, but we want to put this in under this and things that are not necessarily allowed on the basis of the code, then that becomes a different kind of question. If you're going to do that kind of a PUD approval plan that allows a use that wouldn't be allowed there without a PUD overlay, then that becomes a different question, or it allows a different kind of density, or whatever it is that is a variation from the underlying code. But if then that becomes much more of an issue. I'm just not sure why. I mean, from what Mr. Langenfelter has said, the reason was we want to have, a holistic plan and signal that this is all going to tie in together. And that's that's a goal. I don't know if there's, for me, looking at this when it first came in, I'm like, okay, this is a lot. Why is this all together? Why is this for parts that are not all those kinds of things? The question is why. And so if that's the reason, then we can approve a PUD plan. It's just a question if it's something that allows, that steps beyond what's allowed under the underlying zoning, and there's some point at a challenge from one side or the other, then that becomes a question of whether that's actually a legally binding document. So, it may be that it's like, we want to run this through, this is one way to make sure that we meet the concerns of the city as far as the things that are required under a PUD plan, that are not required under regular building permits. So,
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
for what that's worth.
Thank you, Tim. I was just trying to understand what we missed in trying to look at this and break it down into what needed to be applied for. Right, if somebody would have come up and said, I want to put a PUD on, I want to do PUD on something, we would have said you have to do a map change first. So
Discussion from the commissioners?
did you want to close the public hearing?
So, I want to find out one thing. So, my understanding, at least from what I'm hearing, is, are we gonna have to do a map change for multicolor on the north side?
I believe that's what Mr. Moore's suggesting is
That's what I
the
wanna make sure I understand
most
that.
legally safe route for the city to operate.
Then that's gonna put it, basically going back, developing the PUD from square one.
No, I don't think it would require that, but it would add another step in there.
Just withdraw item 2. We'll build it as of right. We can go on to items 3 and 4, I'm sorry, there's no need to keep, if we're not gonna do it, we'll just withdraw it. And it can be built as long as the other items keep moving forward. Because if item 2 is putting the southern parcel in, we don't need that request. We'll just pull it out and approve everything else. Because if the city doesn't, if this is, all we were trying to do was help, and it's not, so if we withdraw item 2, let's just do that and move on and keep the other stuff moving.
Are you requesting to withdraw all of item 2?
Item 2 is just adding the southern parcel, correct?
No. it's-
That's the only part we need, that's what I'm saying, withdraw it, so what we can do is the southern parcel addition, just don't put it in. Move everything else forward, ignore the southern parcel.
Okay, I understand, but I believe what Mr. Moore was saying is that the northern parcel does not have a PUD overlay in our zoning. So if you go to our zoning map, there is no PUD placed over that, and so.
Correct, but you can do a preliminary and final in the same action, correct? Which is what we've requested.
I think what he's saying is that's step 2. So step 1 is updating the zoning to reflect that that has a PUD overlay, and then doing the preliminary and final.
But you can do it in one continuous action, correct? You can do them all simultaneously.
I believe we could do them all at one meeting, but don't believe they would be one action item.
So that's what I'm saying, but if we can do them all in order, so if you need to say it needs to be a PUD, and it needs this, and it needs that, just break it up into those steps, but it needs to be done together.
Yeah,
Because as you and I have discussed, especially with our legal team, we do not want PUD put on anything without a set of rules. Because I don't want to have PUD where I can't do anything at all, it devalues the property. That's our concern. So if we want to do them all as one continuous action, we're okay with that.
Okay,
And it would just be a question of making sure you pass the things, the 3 or 4 things, in the right order at the meeting.
correct. And my understanding is that as we sit here, we're missing the first thing, which is the overlay.
Right.
The request to amend the map to place the overlay.
So does that make 5 and 6, items 5 and 6 basically null and void until we get that overlay?
Well, let's take a look at that here shortly, but let's
Okay.
get item 2 off our docket. Anyone else to speak for the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners? It's
Never happened.
not while I've been here. It seems to me that, based on the advice we're being given, that we ought to probably table this item, include the request for the map amendment at the November meeting, and then reconsider those 2 items together. So I would make a motion to table item 2 to our November meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
No, if I could just ask a question, I want to make sure I understood what, I know you seconded it, but it would appear that what you're saying is then, that what we're going to do is, we are going to make sure that, first of all, we pull the south parcel out of the request for a PUD of the original factor 52.
Correct.
Okay, but then at that meeting, we would discuss including the north side in the original, into the factory 52.
There would be 2 pieces. There would be first the request for the zoning map amendment that would place the PUD overlay. And then following that would be the request to incorporate it into the Factory 52 PUD.
Okay. But we can do that at the same meeting,
Correct. But we have to do it in that order.
in that order, okay. Okay, I understand.
And 2 is being taken off the table altogether right now.
We will table it until the next meeting. Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item 3. Public hearing, Mick Oaks, Associate Developer with PLK Communities, is submitting a preliminary planned unit development PUD of the existing 4590 Beach Street Factory 52 PUD development Phase 2 for properties known as 2760 Morgan Way, Hamilton County, Auditor Book 651, page 19, parcel 0206, consisting of 2.267 acres, and Book 651, page 0019, parcel 0210, consisting of 5.644 acres. Mr. Oaks?
Hi there. Mick Oaks, PLK Communities. So I wanted to address some of the items listed in 3 and 4 and provide some further clarification, addressing specifically the building, the fire department, the police, and public works. Just by saying that PLK Communities is, will design and construct each building in accordance with each department comments and best building practices. These comments will be addressed by and documented when submitting each building permit applications. So those of being reviewed. Specifically off the bat, I wanted to address the engineered fire truck turn radiuses for the multicolored property first. It's a little bit harder to depict in this PowerPoint image.
You're page 32, actually, show it.
That's correct. So this has been revised since we submitted the Phase 2 PUD packet. And we will provide new copies to all of Planning Commission before it reaches council. But this is just depicting that we have massaged some of those buildings. We've stretched them east to west to fit the fire truck turning radius and wheel, so it's no longer hitting curbs and getting close to some of those building patterns. But like I said, we will present refreshed copies of this prior to council.
Did you say that was multicolor?
This is the multicolored parcel, yes.
Yeah, they're talking about the Morgan Way property right now, is what the agenda item number 3 is, Morgan Way?
I'll alter
It's
it.
actually part of, the original part of Phase 2.
It's the.
This
yeah.
is the highway land then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is the 2.267 acres and the 5.644 acres.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So this is another building department comment I wanted to address was the open space exceeding 25%. I will go ahead and hand out these hard copies if we needed to, but I also have them up on the screen. So, starting off with the inclusion, assuming that we were to include the Robertson South parcel. Next one. Thank you. So taking a step back, if this is Phase 2 proposed as a whole, this is incorporating all of the highway land, Morgan Way, as we were talking about, including it also the multicolored property and the multicolored south. All those acreages combined, open area space is just over 6 acres, which equates to over 43% would be open area space, exceeding that 25%. Understanding with some of the discussions earlier today, if we were to scale back some different portions of what's included in that Phase 2, looking at the PUD as a whole, this is some of the breakout that we have done. the bottom line is excluding multicolor south, excluding, including multicolor into the Phase 2 highway land, and then even excluding multicolor, we are still meeting that 25% threshold for open area space. So I wanted to get out in front and address that we are in compliance with open area for the entire Phase 2, even with some of the adjustments that are ebbs and flows of what this PUD will look like. Furthermore, I wanted to address the preliminary plan submission of the location, size, and landscaping of the parking lots. So pages 5, 13, 18, and 27 of the Phase 2 PUD submission packet addresses it. We will have an additional 827 public parking spaces consisting of 263 surface parking spaces and 564 structured garage parking spaces. These stall sizes will be standard 8.5 by 18 feet, and the handicap stall ratio will be as follows to the Phase 1 approved PUD ADA handicap parking ratio. It's previously approved. Moving on to the community development, the comments of the target goal of Phase 1 and Phase 2 was to develop over a third of all dwelling units to be a 2 or 3 bedroom throughout the entire Factory 52 development. There was a comment that the bicycle tower was under 15% of the 2 and 3 bedrooms. But taking a step back, and we attached a chart here, and I have hard copies if everyone would like one as well. But including Phase 1 with the multicolor parcel, the ratio of 2 and 3 bedrooms exceeds 44% of all the dwelling units. Our target goal was 1/3. With the incorporation of the bicycle tower, we are still meeting our 1/3 target goal. We did follow the market. There was more of a demand for studios and 1-bedrooms as we move further into the site. So hence, that's why the bicycle tower is underneath that ratio. But taking a step back and looking at the site as a whole and all the units, we are still exceeding that 1/3 target ratio. Additionally, we have a memo regarding the traffic impact study, and I would, Carrie, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to pass out some more. So, what we had our traffic engineer look at and take a broader approach to was comparing the peak travel times for when both the United States Playing Card and Multicolor Corporation were the factories themselves, and compare the total trips to the site versus the estimated completion of all Factory 52 Phase 1 and 2. In the bottom line, and it goes into detail throughout this memo, that the projected max trips would only equate to 48% of the total trips produced by the prior land uses of United States Playing Card and Multicolor Corporation. Hence, this should alleviate some of the concerns listed of the traffic impact study. These results are showing that the completion of Factory 52 Phase 2 is not adding any additional stress as to what the infrastructure already there should be able to support, as it has supported for the last 15 plus years on into the past. Actually, much longer than that. So that being said, I'd be happy, I'm sure myself, Nick, and Brandon would be happy to address any further questions regarding the Morgan Way Highway land portion of the Phase 2 PUD.
Any questions for Mr. Oakes?
I just have one quick, and again, I have not studied this, so I apologize, it's probably, when you say trips, what did they monitor what intersections in this traffic study?
It was Forest, Park, Robertson. I have the full report. I could get you all that information, but it was about a 95-page document. It was very detailed.
Okay, and I'm just curious, this might not even be something you need, how does, because you don't have that much office on the site, I mean, that's,
We have none currently.
how do they take that into consideration today, the amount of people, I guess, that you're working from home, so it really shouldn't impact the trips. I'm just curious, because I've been out of the loop on how they're adjusting to the change in way of the environment, how things are working today.
Right.
Compared to what they were working 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I would have to refer to the traffic
But,
engineer
I
on
mean,
that.
Your point is, for all of us that live in Norwood, this should, when you're fully built out at phase 2, it's less than when.
It's a
playing
52
card- Right.
Yes, sir. It's a
I mean, that's
52%
the summary.
reduction from the peak of multicolor and US playing card.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone to speak in favor of the development? Anyone to speak in favor? Seeing none, anyone to speak in opposition?
So, do I have to get sworn in again?
No, you're still under oath,
I'm still, okay.
still sworn in.
So, with various proposals, I think everybody knows that I am all about elevation drawings because we can see it's WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. So I like to see elevation drawings. And I know we're at the very beginning of this, but what's kind of evolving, and I've noticed since I started living here, is that as we start to develop things adjacent to the highway and we take away earth and trees and we put up hard surfaces, we wind up with a lot more noise. And so in seeing this right up next to the highway, and I've noticed that on 71 South, where Factory 52 has been developed, and I mean, it looks great and everything, but studies show that the only way to reduce noise is to have an earthen berm that is dirt, stops the noise. So I'm wondering if, I know that you can build whatever you want in that south area, but I know it's pretty noisy back there already. And so if we build something, if we build residences where there's all this highway noise, what is the likelihood of them remaining in those units for more than a year? So I think we've never really had a discussion about noise. I know that where I live, I noticed a great difference when the Red Cross building and the hotel went up at Realistic. Now, those are very nice buildings, but you went from having a slope of earth to having it carved out, and there's a big parking area and the hotel. So whereas I could hear the highway noise on my third floor, but not on my second, now I can really hear the highway noise on my second floor. And so I think this is gonna have some noise impacts, and I think, it would be nice to see something, because I know that Evanston has applied for, I believe, federal money for a noise wall on the south side of 71. And that has been 5 years in the making. So if we have a problem, then it's going to be the city that's going to have to deal with it. So, it would be nice to see a berm or something, a green berm built in, but, so that's my concern.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
Yes, before we get started, I have a question for Nick. Nick, are these, either one, are these all gonna be apartments, or are they gonna be condos?
all rental apartments.
Okay, because we did some research, and right now, it's at least according to, what is it, the county auditor, they're listed as condos.
Oh, no, that's, okay.
Can you, I'm just trying to understand.
So here's the thing. In order to finance the project, you have to condo the land. So each land has a parcel, a sub-parcel that's a condo parcel that it sits on, so we can get a loan. Because nobody will lend on every building at the property. You have to go to individual lenders. So it is a condo parcel that the land sits on because we didn't subdivide the whole property for each parcel. It's like each building is not its own parcel, it's on one. Actually, I think there's 3 on the whole property right now. So under each parcel, you build on air rights, and each structure then has the ability to have a first mortgage with the bank. There are no residential condominiums. The term condominium can mean land rights, it can mean a bunch of different things. So each parcel is on a condominium parcel. So that way too, what we do is it helps the city from the TIF and other development agreements because they can tax each individual space based on its use. So the way our CRA works is we have the CRA on residential only, and the commercial spaces pay full taxes. There's no way to judge that without assigning a specific value. One way to assign that specific value is to create a condo parcel to put it in. So like if you look at the retail in the parking garage, that is a condo. For just the retail, they can then value that at the auditor's office that then allows everybody to collect the taxes. That's the only way to do it.
Okay, because we're trying to understand.
No, the agreement with the EPA says we will never have an individual homeowner. So there's no condominium in a traditional residential sense that most people are used to.
Okay, we got that, and I want to know.
It's an air rights condo.
Because it
Yep.
said that. Okay, thank you. Okay. The findings, let me go through the findings. The applicant's asking for the planning commission to accept Factor 52, Phase 2 preliminary plans as presented in the northeast quadrant. This location is upon the original, is based upon the original PUD only. Phase 2, I have a list of all the commercial spaces, residential towers, satellite bar, gazebo, listed all the square footages and so on. Comments from the Norwood Fire Department, Police, Public Works, Planning, Building Department. The fire department's main concerns are 100 PSI at the top floor of the building. So you'll probably be dealing with that and getting a fire pump up there. Any canopies or bridges or openings that a fire truck will encounter have to have a clear height for the tallest fire truck in the city to pass through without any obstructions. Estimated clear height by the time we're done is about 15 feet. Sheet 24, the water main nodes, 400 feet to 2 hydrants. This measurement is actually a straight line, not in a radius. So it's set up that way. FDCs need to be no more than 100 feet from the hydrant. Parking garages and the surface lots need to allow the fire trucks ingress, which would not be the ladder, which would be just a regular fire truck. Police at that time did not have any comments. Public Works, they need to allow for 10 feet clearance on all sides at ground level to allow for any repairs to underground water and sewer, et cetera. And the detail of piping for clean water must be follow the City of Cincinnati's requirements. And then you have a copy of my writing, so we had a report from the preliminary development submission report, and I included all of those items from them. The building department, supplemental plans of design. The public or private open spaces need to be calculated percentage. You did that. What we were trying to do is just understand per area. That's where that came about. Common open space, the 25%, total land of proposed development permitted by the section shall be dedicated to the, or private open spaces. So what you have to do is get it declared dedicated to us through the process, through the As we talked earlier, the community development, we have the traffic study report, which you're trying to address. See, let's continue. Proposed 190-unit apartment building. It contains 28 two-bedrooms and 0 three-bedroom apartments, but a PUD as per phase 1, built out, as well as PLK's letter dated 11/15/2021. They intended to develop over 1/3 of the dwelling units for 2 and 3 bedrooms. This equates to just under 15%, which you addressed already. The traffic studies, if you're gonna be dealing with the entrance along Robertson, right by the bridge, that's gonna have to be an ingress, not an ingress, because that's gonna be a safety hazard for the police department. Okay. Now, the staff recommendations, really I had 2, but it's really 2, not 1. Accept the PUD Phase 2, submitted with the following caveat: all comments and concerns are to be addressed in the construction document submittal prior to any permits being issued. Or you could actually deny it, and the apartment building does not contain the appropriate number of 2 or 3 bedrooms. Apartments, actual open area plans showing all open spaces. Well, you sort of submitted all of those. So really, it's only one where we don't have a problem with it. We just have to make sure that all the criteria has been addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Skelly, anything additional?
No, so I also did a review of the plan as a preliminary PUD. There was no objections. There was about 18 conditions I had. You've heard the testimony. So the big concerns are looking at the transportation, both in terms of trip generation, how is the traffic dissipating based on what land use is proposed. Then also looking at a similar transportation engineering study with regards to 3 access points, intersections. I think that's critical from geometric design, having the intersection leveling area, looking at the safe stopping sight distances, a lot of that related, including if there's gonna be a grade that's above an area that's generally considered acceptable by the engineers, how does that impact runoff? I think, and we talked about it as well with the hearing, revisiting the open space, how we determine that. I think that's worthwhile. So those are, I would say, the more fundamental discussions that need to occur. Definitely having both city civil engineer and the transportation engineer looking at the utilities is important. So there were some minor things, but again, I would not have provided conditions of approval for the PUD if it wasn't so.
Okay. We'll close the hearing. Discussion, questions by commissioners? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that Planning Commission endorse the preliminary Phase 2 planned unit development, subject to the caveat that all comments and concerns are addressed in the construction document submission prior to permits being issued, and recommend it to the Norwood City Council.
Second.
Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to public hearing. Item number 4, now open the public hearing. Mick Oaks, Associate Developer with PLK Communities, submitting the final planned unit development, PUD plan of the existing 4590 Beach Street, Factory 52 PUD Development Phase 2 for properties known as 2760 Morgan Way, Hamilton County Auditor Book 651, page 19, parcel 0206, consisting of 2.267 acres, and Book 651, page 0019, parcel 0210, consisting of 5.644 acres. This is a final PUD for what we just approved as the preliminary PUD. Oh. Open the floor to Mr. Oakes.
So I wanted to address the title guarantee or rider for the site. We will evaluate what is necessary and have everything provided to council for approval in a due process manner. But happy to address any questions further regarding this phase two. And I did want to clarify, in the report I have, this is just listing the phase two scope as the highway land we just discussed. Is this also including the multicolored northern parcel, or is that a separate item?
That is a separate item, so
Separate item.
item 4 is the final approval for the same parcels of land that we just discussed in item 3.
Understood. So happy to answer any additional questions from what we just spoke about.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Oakes.
Thank you.
Offer an opportunity for anybody to speak in favor of the final PUD. An opportunity for anyone to speak in favor of the final PUD. Seeing none, offer an opportunity for anyone to speak in opposition of the final PUD. Anyone speak in opposition to the final PUD? Seeing none, I will close the hearing. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you. Really, it's the same write-up as item number 3, but this is for the final. And the staff recommendations, we have 2 that we recommend, that the group recommended, accept the Phase 2 PUD final submittal with the following caveats. Just as agenda number, item 3, refer to the engineering underground reports. The guarantee has to be submitted and approved by the Planning Commission and Council. And comments from the staff report along with the staff report, agenda item 3s are addressed in the construction documents submitted prior to any permits being issued. Or you can deny it until the title guarantee has been submitted and approved by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Skelly? Okay. Questions, comments, discussion from commissioners? I think, Mr. Oakes, if I could ask you one question. The turning radius for the fire trucks, you said that had been addressed, is that
Yes.
correct, or does that still need to be
No,
addressed?
it's updated. We just have not provided copies yet. We can get that as quickly as possible to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We will need that to evaluate.
I believe that was included in the preliminary caveats.
Yeah. And we have, not so much on number 4, but it's really on 5 and 6. We had, it made major issues.
Okay, I see that. Okay, I will make a motion to endorse the final Phase 2 planned unit development and recommend it to Norwood City Council, subject to the staff recommendations and caveats referring to the engineering underground report. The title guarantee has been submitted and approved by Planning Commission and Council, and that comments from staff report of agenda item number 3 are also addressed in the construction documents prior to any permits being issued. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes. No, could I just ask a quick question of the two staff members? If I did not take, in fact, I'm late to this Factory 52 development, so
So am I.
I did not check the final plan in relation to the initial. There's a consistency requirement that it is, and I didn't see it in the staff report. It is consistent with the original submission.
It's not totally consistent. They've modified buildings, but it's in the,
It's probably not the right word.
no, so it totally doesn't match
No, it doesn't have
phase,
to, I understand.
phase one, because they've added aces, they've added and modified some layouts, but I know that those plans have been modified and addressed
But both
by
of
the
you
board.
feel it is in line with the original.
Yeah, it's
That's-
the intent of.
Okay, and that's,
Yes,
because that's an important qualification, for me at least, as you're talking about PUDs. Okay.
yes. That's why we recommended the okay to phase one, phase two for that area of the original Factory 52.
Mike, I cut you off, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I have part of the preliminary Factory 52 preliminary plan. You're welcome, I can give it to you right now. So both, as you heard, it's very similar to what was approved, whatever, 4, 5 plus years ago. But more importantly, the actual, like, vesting of that preliminary plan is now expired, so they're free to even do something more dramatically different if they wanted to, because they're going through a process again.
Okay.
But at least respecting the original plan. As you can see, it's pretty close in terms of what they were proposing, a little bit of a change in terms of the different building footprints.
Which they will, I understand that. Okay, thank you both, I appreciate it. Noah?
Okay. Looking at our agenda, items D5 and D6, public hearings are both pertaining to the multicolored preliminary PUD and multicolored final PUD. As we tabled item number 2, it seems appropriate to table items 5 and 6 at the same meeting. It includes the northern parcel
Right.
and the southern
5
parcel.
and 5 and 6 are the northern part, the preliminary and final.
No, it only include, it also includes the southern, as it's written into the agenda. So item 5, Mick Oaks Associate Developer with PLK Communities is submitting a preliminary planned unit development PUD plan of the existing 4590 Beach Street Factory 52 PUD development for the properties known as 4500 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio 45212, 6.48 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor 651, parcel 0019, page 0127, located within M2 Heavy Manufacturing Zoning District, that's the northern parcel, and 2.839 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0030, parcel 026, located within NBD Neighborhood Business Zoning District, and that's the southern parcel.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On items 5 and 6, it's the applicant is asking for planned community acceptance of Factory 52 Phase 2 PUD preliminary, this is preliminary one, to include multicolor on the north side of Robertson. This 5 and 6 is for north side. One is for the preliminary, one is for the final. Number 2 was strictly was because they were both not, one of them was non-contiguous.
Correct.
It was
But
causing
the-
that problem.
The applications are for multicolor as a whole. And multicolor as a whole included the north side and the south side, which is how the agenda was written and approved.
Right.
Yes, that's correct. The agenda is written to include both the northern parcel and the southern parcel in items 5 and 6. Mr. Oaks?
Are we able to extrapolate the two from one another? I mean, if the agenda item 2 had a condition where we would, separate the southern parcel of Robertson but approve the northern parcel of multicolor, how would we have gotten to agenda 5 and 6, right? That we could still pull those two apart.
Well, we tabled agenda item 2 to the November meeting.
Correct.
So
Put a PUD overlay or
The map
we would need to do
amendment.
the map amendment in order to extend the PUD over to the multicolored parcel. And so having not done that, I don't think we can move on to items 5 and 6, which is approving the preliminary and the final PUD plan for those portions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I have a few questions. Nick, would you like to address some of these?
That doesn't make sense at all, actually. So what we had done was we submitted them all as a group, and then it was decided that, because we submitted each parcel for a final, preliminary and final PUD. And then we did not choose like how it was presented to you all. So what I'm saying is we need the northern parcel approved. If the southern parcel doesn't need to be a part of it, which is item 2, then we'll pull that item. That's what we said, right? But the northern parcel is parcel 5. So now you're saying, well, we wanted the southern one as a part of it, but we don't.
No, that's not what we're
So,
saying.
but for item 5 though, if item 5 is the northern and the southern, or just like, we already took the southern out, so it should just be at this point, it'd be a partial approval of just the northern parcel, correct? Because we don't have the southern anymore?
I understand what you're saying, but we have not applied the overlay district to the northern parcel. And we
But you
have
can
not
do them all
extended.
together, that's what we talked about, you do them all as to how you approve them in the order you do, but we don't want a PUD filed with no rules or requirements.
I
So you have to do
understand
that in
that.
order.
And so because of that concern, we tabled item 2.
We don't need item 2 at all, it's just the southern parcel, correct?
No, item 2 is not just the southern parcel.
That's the way we have it on our side, that's why I'm confused. So the document we were given shows it that way.
Item 2 is Mick Oaks, associate developer with PLK Communities, is submitting an application to expand the existing 18.673 acreage 4590 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio 45212, Factory 52 Planned Unit Development Phase 1 and Phase 2, now comprised of Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0019, and parcel 0127, 0206, and 0210, to include properties known as 4500 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio 45212, 6.480 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, parcel 0019, page 0127, located within M2 Heavy Manufacturing Zoning District. That's the northern parcel. And 2.839 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0030, parcel 0206, located within NBD Neighborhood Business Zoning District. That's the southern parcel. So item number 2 included both the northern parcel of multicolor and the southern parcel of multicolor.
Correct, then what's the difference between 2 and 5?
2 and 5, 5 is a preliminary for the northern part only.
No.
No.
See, that's what our report has, that's why I'm confused.
Item number 2 is asking to extend and include additional properties into the Factory 52 planned unit development over a parcel that does not have a map amendment, making it a PUD. Item 5 is asking to approve a preliminary PUD on a parcel that does not have a PUD overlay on it. Item 6 is asking to do a final approval of a preliminary.
Correct, so on this one, so I understand we were not extending it, so we're not extending it, but you do have the right then to approve the preliminary and final, and you can do a conditional approval of removing just the southern parcel, correct? So it'd be no different than adding a line item that says, don't use this road. Because if the first one was to expand it, don't expand it, do its own, right? The second one is just to approve a preliminary and final. So we decline the expansion, not doing that because of the road. But if this item here is the preliminary and final, you can approve it on its own as a separate item, which is why it's separated here. And all we have to do is a conditional approval only to include the northern parcel of this preliminary and final.
But there's no overlay on the map. There is no planned unit development overlay on the zoning map upon which to apply the preliminary zoning or the preliminary PUD.
But why can't you do that as part of the same process?
We can't do it We can't do it as one single item. It would have to be two separate agenda items. One amending the map to include a PUD overlay, and then one approving the preliminary plan, and then one approving the final plan. So there would be three amendments, or three items on there. Is that correct, Mr. Moore?
I think you need another one to expand the PUD area,
We don't need it.
the plan, to include those two parcels, which would be item 2, which is just to expand to include those as well, but not, one for the zoning, one for the plan, the area, the zoning area, the PUD area, and then new ones for the preliminary and final plans of the area, I think.
Thank you,
We
Mr. Moore.
think, or?
I thought about it before an hour ago, so.
So, but walk me through, I understand we don't want to expand it, but you have the exact same document, so you could give a PUD on its own on that parcel, correct?
You could do a PUD on its own on
Which is
that
why you
parcel.
broke it out as a separate item?
I didn't break it out as a separate
Well,
item.
so, I mean, I believe that's why staff had done it, so it could be broken out as that separate item. But now we're
Yes,
saying
so
we
the-
don't want to do it as a separate item because we need a map amendment. But when we submitted it and put it on the agenda, why wouldn't the map amendment have been added?
The map amendment has to be requested by the property owner.
But we requested to put a PUD on the property.
No, I apologize, I misspoke.
You know, we put PUD overlays on properties without asking. Yeah,
Okay.
Because we don't trust whoever owns it at the time.
But the long and short of it is, without a map amendment,
Without
you
the
can't
permission,
place,
that's legal.
you
Great.
can't place the PUD on it unless the zoning map has been amended to reflect that there's a PUD overlay. And in this case, there's not a PUD overlay on these parcels.
So, help my ignorance here, I'm sorry. When I file for PUDs in most municipalities, we file for a preliminary and final report. We don't say, go zone the property that we don't own yet, that we're about ready to buy PUD, and then put this on afterwards. We would just file with the city for a preliminary and final PUD on the property. What is the difference between zoning a property PUD and zoning a property PUD that has rules already in place? Because all we did was create the rules for the PUD that you wanted to file and put on the property.
The issue here is that there is no overlay placed on the property.
But what is the difference between an overlay and a preliminary PUD?
The overlay is the zoning. It's the zoning itself. How is this parcel zoned?
So is a PUD by law in Ohio Revised Code. A PUD is zoning.
Right,
Correct?
The plan is not zoning.
Yes.
The plan dictates what, heights, buildings, locations. It effectively is the exact same set of rules as zoning, correct?
No, because the plan would be, yeah, sort of, I mean, the zone, for example, zoning, the PUD overlay is like saying, this is zoned, manufacturing. And the plan is a little more, it requires more approvals, but is not that different than, here's my building permit to build this factory under this zoning. This zoning allows this. If it's a PUD overlay, then you can't, if you're gonna deviate it off from the underlying zoning, there are requirements. You need to submit a plan to build anything on a PUD that's been zoned PUD. And those parcels have not been zoned PUD.
But
So council, I mean, we can approve a plan, but it's a weird thing to do when it's not zoned for that.
But walk me through this. So
Okay.
what is PUD on a property other than letters if there are no set of rules tied to it?
Well, there are. If you're gonna submit a PUD plan, you need to do things that you don't need to do with other zoning.
Which we
Right?
did, right?
Right, and so that would be the main difference, is to make sure that whatever it is, and it also allows PUD zoning also allows multiple uses that wouldn't necessarily be allowed together in one use. I mean, in one area.
So that's what I'm saying, we filed for an amendment to put a PUD on the property with a set of rules.
With your rule.
Correct, and what you're saying is we need to file PUD with no rules, then come back and add our rules. I just don't know the difference. I think what we did was we actually did more than we needed to, is what it sounds like.
If you're talking about those rules, then yes, I would agree. That there's not necessarily rules that would apply to all of the parcels within a PUD unless it's a part of the PUD plan that's been submitted, that was submitted by the property owner.
So we submitted the PUD plan to the property owner,
Right.
but we can't file the PUD because it's not a PUD.
Well, you submitted it, you have a PUD plan over an area that's zoned PUD, right? You can submit, it's like submitting, I'm gonna build a house in a non-PUD zone, so I'm gonna submit and have everybody approve this PUD plan for my house, even though it's not zoned PUD, I don't have to do it. Because that's kind of it's just a weird thing, that's not something that happens, that people submit PUD plans or that expand them beyond the realm of what's actually zoned PUD. Nobody's ever asked to go beyond the PUD area. They've asked, to, we don't want to be under a PUD.
So
They've
we
never
asked
asked
this
to
too
do that.
much? Is that what I'm hearing? Like, I don't understand.
It's just, from my perspective, I'm not sure exactly legally what the effect of it would be, but if you want us to approve a plan that puts more restrictions on it, I don't have a problem with that.
So then our
It's just a
that's what I'm saying,
question,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, so then our application will be okay, correct? Because that's all we did.
It's, you know, it is, but I'm not sure the legal effect is if we start arguing about it in 10 or 15 years on the multicolor sites, if there's not a PUD zoning on that spot. That's what I'm saying.
Is the application as we submit it, technically, is it okay to proceed as it is?
I think so. It's
Okay,
like,
that's what I
you know,
wanted to know.
council
So-
can pass, council can pass a thing that, I'm not sure if this is, it can pass resolutions, it's, you know, it doesn't really mean anything if they pass a resolution that says, this is whatever day in Norwood. I'm not sure what the legal effect of that would be. It doesn't really matter if nobody's gonna fight about it, but that's, they could. Planning Commission could approve this. Again, I'm not sure what the legal effect is gonna be when we get, you know, if some dispute comes up regarding the multicolored properties, if they are not, if they are not zoned with a PUD overlay, if we got to court, would the court treat it as a development agreement? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's not a thing that necessarily, you know, but I think it's more along the lines of, here's what we want. We've had developments where like, here's our plan, here's kind of what we want it to look like, and the city will approve it, that looks really awesome, but it's not necessarily a PUD plan. So if something changes, I don't know what happens with that. If we want to make it look right, we would want to change the zoning, and technically we should separate out the two multiples, but I can see including the other one as a part of this. It doesn't fit what you submitted one big thing all at once, you had a way of looking at it that makes sense from a developer's perspective. From your perspective, is we want to link all these things together. It doesn't fit the process that we have set up, and so it's been slotted into all the different items here. And it doesn't really fit what we do. And so that's where the confusion's coming in. And I don't know how much discussion there's been between PLK and this body, or I don't think this body at all, or with council, or I guess some, I don't know if there's been much discussion beyond submitting the plans and getting the report back from staff. So that is part of it too, I think.
We've been actively meeting every other week with the city for a year. So what I would say at that standpoint, though, is if they are allowed to approve the preliminary and final PUD as it sits, that's a course we would like to proceed with. Is that?
Yes, I understand. Okay. So we will move to item 5. Mick Oaks, Associate Developer with PLK Communities, is submitting a preliminary planned unit development plan of the existing 4590 Beach Street Factory 52 PUD development for the properties known as 4500 Beach Street, Norwood, Ohio, 45212. 6.480 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, parcel 0019, page 0127, located within M2 Heavy Manufacturing Zoning District, and 2.839 acreage, Hamilton County Auditor's Book 651, page 0030, parcel 0206, located within NBD Neighborhood Business District. Mr. Oaks? And just off the top, I believe the request is just to consider the 6.48 acres, the northern
The
portion.
northern portion, correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please proceed.
So we had talked preliminary about this, and now thankfully we're on the multicolor plot. This is, as said before, the updated turning radiuses for fire trucks. We will make sure that staff gets all these updated drawings, but it has already been fixed. I just wanted to show that it's in progress. We'll get you the hard copies for that. Regarding the rest of the police, public works, we will continue to construct and design in accommodation with all these comments and best building practices, as we have been doing so in phase one and moving forward. Same answer regarding the other staff comments about the parking structures. Pages 5, 13, 18, and 27, 827 additional spaces, 263 parking, surface parking, 564 structured standard stall sizes, and we will continue to adhere to the established handicapped stall ratios approved in phase one. Wanted to note, as far as community development, that any public art, branding, billboards will be presented to Norwood Planning Commission for approval when we get closer to those. That's something that we've done all through phase one. We will continue to do so and get input and advice and feedback on prior to anything going up. That being said, I did want to touch on the traffic study as well. There's some similar concerns listed to as that. But in summary, again, overall, the expected completion of the entire Factory 52 development will generate significantly less traffic than when both factories were up and running. So that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the multicolor site. And I would like to bring up Brandon Geyer, Vice President of Architecture and Design, to walk through some of the renderings that we have for the multicolor townhome site.
Thank you. Mr. Guy, if you would raise your hand, repeat after me. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Brandon Geyer, Guyer, 5905 Galbraith Road, East Galbraith. So along Robertson, we have the townhomes, and I want to stress, you mentioned the townhomes, or I'm sorry, the single-family homes we have on the south side of Robertson. What we're trying to do is be, friendly to our neighbors and be contextualize them and reduce some of the scale. And so there we have 3-story townhomes. The multicolored building currently is 4 stories, so we're trying to reduce the scale. And then as you go back or north of the site, everything kind of steps up and gets a little bit taller. So that's a little bit more pedestrian friendly. As you walk along Robertson, the bottom first floor of the townhomes are stone, and it's a really tactile feel. And then as you go up on the second, third floor, it'll be a little bit more, a little bit lighter material. So it's going to be a friendly pedestrian, pathway. One of the previous comments was concerned about, walking through a parking lot to get back to factory. We were sensitive to that. We're trying to, make it a friendly destination. If you look here, we've got these main arteries that pass through the site, and then we're trying to load all the garages inward. So all the front facing, the front doors are facing Robertson, and then we've got this central boulevard that, will have a nice tree-lined grass boulevard along the front here, and some fenced-in yards. And then again, you've got the access road for your driveways. So we're trying to be sensitive to that, yeah, that's about it. There's the front elevation. Questions?
Questions for Mr. Geyer? Thanks, sir. Offer an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak in favor of the preliminary planned unit development. Again,
I think it looks good. More trees, always, not going to, I like that elevation.
I do want to add two comments because they have been involved in the conversations, just so I can add on that as well. So I think there was a comment I heard about the signage. So we're all aware there's that big billboard sign on the highway, or maybe you've seen it before. We have canceled their lease, but we have at least a year and a half or so left on it right now. They do have a pre-approved permit for an additional sign to go there, but we basically said we don't want it unless it's something that fits into the overall development. We do denote the sign on the property plans because unfortunately I can't make it go away yet. So, and I think it pays like $1,000 a year. It just costs us money to sit there. But our goal is ultimately to clean that back up, whether it's a brand new wall, because I think it's kind of hard to see, I can let cursor over here. We call it like a brand new wall. So what we're actually looking to do is like, how do we create an exterior concrete buffer wall here or something else? Because we do think that's going to help whatever that future space and use becomes. And then the other item is we kind of, this access point on Robertson, I know we'll work with the fire department on this comment, but the reason we actually did this access point was because the one at the far right was because we actually believe it's going to alleviate a lot of the traffic, and it's the best place for a potential stoplight if we needed one that allowed traffic to go to and from Oakley and not have to go up to the corner of Robertson and Beach. So we just going with the fire department's comment that it's right in, right out only may not be the best suggestion, but we want to make sure we have the proper traffic data to present before we just say that's not the right idea. But ultimately, what we do is we do see that as the major exit point to alleviate a lot of the traffic up at the corner. So that is an active conversation. Also, and Chairman Powers has been in some of the meetings with us. We've talked to ODOT, we've talked to a few others. The issue right now is that bridge is in the city of Norwood, owned by the state of Ohio, but then you also have to engage the city of Cincinnati, who feeds into it. It's not the easiest bridge to try to re-stripe, do sidewalks or whatever, but we are actively in those conversations. To your point, it is a 5 to 7 year process that we're about a year into. But that goes from 2 lanes to 1.5 quickly. So what our thought was is let's decel the traffic and force it in, but we're not just gonna tell people they can't turn left out, because if we tell them there's no left turn, they're all gonna go right back through the residential neighborhood or choose a different street. So we're actively working with our traffic engineers to figure out the right way to signalize or whatever we need to do in that location, because we do feel like with that new access point added, which our goal is to get it started in the spring quickly, it should start alleviating some of the burden through the neighborhood. So I just wanted to kind of point those out because the team hadn't been involved there.
thank you. Anyone to speak in favor of the preliminary planned unit development? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Wolf?
I don't know what to say. I mean, the plans look good, but at this point, because we have not seen the latest drawings that they are showing us today, I cannot render any decisions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Skelly?
Same, so as long as we have sufficient time to kind of review, and again, what we have been doing is different from other projects, having staff collectively, review these things. And then if we need to seek additional guidance and input from both engineers for the city, and then any additional dialogue with the developers, so that's why, I would hate to give you a decision on the spot for these sort of things.
Thank you, Mr. Skelly. Questions, discussion by the commissioners? Any motions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we table agenda item 5 to our November meeting to allow staff to review the updated drawings, fire department to review the updated turning radii for the fire truck, and for staff to have further communications with the developer. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer,
Yes.
As agenda item 6 is the final approval of the same PUD, I would move that we would table that item to our November meeting. I'll offer the representatives PLK to make any comment if they'd like before.
If somebody can tell me why, like, I understand that the building was slightly missed there, but we have the turning radius, that, provided that gets addressed by the city, why are we tabling the item? And I just want to make sure I understand, so we're going to put the whole project on hold for 30 days to make sure that we, what, besides making sure a building's footprint was adjusted, which we made a mistake on, I'm trying to figure out what else we're going to identify between now and then that's a reason not to keep it moving forward.
Well, I think we have a number of things that we need to address. We need to address whether or not the map amendment is required, but that's one thing we need to look at. But the drawings that were submitted to the planning commission for today, you know, they do show the fire truck hopping curbs, they show the fire truck not being able to navigate this.
The
in
building
event of
footprint was off by
emergency.
like 2 feet, so they made the adjustment. That's why I want to make sure, like, 'cause that was, understand that needs to be adjusted, but
I understand you're saying that it's been adjusted, but at this point, staff has not had an opportunity to review it, particularly the fire department staff, to see if it will, satisfy those concerns of the department.
correct, but could a conditional approval be done provided that it meets the requirements? Because that would be no different. I mean, the fire department on the other item says subject to our final review. I mean, be no different than what they're saying on the other items.
I would not be in favor of approving a plan that does not show that the fire truck can make it to these buildings, even on a conditional basis. You know, I want to make sure that these.
To be clear, the fire truck was hitting a curb because there was and a building was off by a foot or two. So like, I get that is right, but we're not driving through buildings. It was a curb, and I just want to make sure because like the other items they have here, which were approved earlier, it says these comments will be addressed and documented with submitting the building permit applications for each project, right under what was approved for the fire department earlier.
And I understand that it says the turning radii shown on sheet 32 as the fire truck going over curbs, possibly hitting cars, and possibly running into corners of two buildings.
That's, and that's what I'm saying, that's what he specifically covered earlier. So what they were concerned about, there was a curb on this bottom left building where they thought it might hit depending on how they came into the property. That was just a building adjustment that was off. It wasn't, the plan was off in general, it was off by like a foot or two, and it was just the building footprint was off. So I want to make sure that,
I understand what you're saying. When the fire department tells me that upon their review, it appears that the fire truck may hit a building, I feel that I need to have some additional review by them to make sure that the plan, as updated, is appropriate for approval.
okay, so just want to make sure I understood that. So the other stuff was okay that they could be later, but not this one.
Mr. Skelly?
Just, I'll throw it back to the hypothetical. So what if city staff collectively meets, our engineers have a discussion, our engineers talk to you, and at the end of the day, we look at this north multicolored lands, and we determine the city is uncomfortable or unwilling to provide 3 access points, intersections to you. How does that bode well for this plan?
You put in more units.
Well, I think there's a number of things to be addressed here.
Well, I'm just using that as one if hypothetical, so you're right. There's probably minor issues we can slice and dice through. But
'Cause
I
the
think
planning
the
commission
city-
zoning,
let-
correct?
Let me just finish. So the city has multiple major concerns, open space as well. I think you've addressed nicely the ratio of singles to the seconds and 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. But like I said, there's a couple of major ones we have that staff, city collectively would like more time to review to see, because ultimately, you know, like I said, just on that one issue, 3 intersections versus 1, it's a big issue.
If these were single-family homes, on most streets, we would allow them to have driveways. So having 2 to 3 access points, I mean, that's the, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So the concern is the fire truck, and again,
The fire truck is certainly my biggest concern when I'm looking at this plan right now. And I want to make sure that the fire department has an opportunity to review it and determine that life safety is not an issue with the way that this plan is laid out.
But the city wouldn't approve a building permit if life safety was a threat, correct?
And neither would the planning commission.
That's correct. So I'm not, so like what I'm saying there is it was a curve, so that's where I gotta make sure.
That's not what it says. It says turning radii shown on sheet 32 has the fire truck going over curbs, possibly hitting cars, and possibly running into the corner of two buildings.
But the term possibly, like, that's the thing, like, we could talk through it with them, but we haven't,
You know, I think the problem is, we need to have the fire department look at this thing. Your turning radiuses that show up on the drawings are dead on, that if the fire department hits those turns and those spaces in the exact spots. Now, what happens if they're off a foot when they're coming into the driveway? What's gonna happen? You know, these are what they look at, and I cannot authorize or even recommend the board to even accept this until we get a chance to look at them. You're showing them to us for the first time. And there are other departments that have to look at it and agree to it. I mean, it's real simple. I think we're just being, I understand where you're coming from, but we need to look at it and understand it a little bit further.
but that's what I'm trying to say, it's like, but typically, when we talk about the PUD, and you've got in the zoning sense, it's, you know, buildings are 35 feet high, we set a basic set of standards. This is not a building permit review, because the planning commission approves the basic zoning comments. Height, safety, wellness, things like that, like, that the items like the planning, like the open area covered it. So that's why I want to make sure, so if there was something off on a building footprint, it's we're doing a building plan review by the planning commission is what I don't understand. That's not what the planning commission's job is, it's zoning.
So what you're
So, yeah, we have to
saying-
adjust it on the building
So what
plan.
you're saying to us is approve this, and then when it comes in for building permits, we reject it totally until this whole thing gets resolved. We're trying to resolve it up front instead of in the back end, because you'll be jumping through hoops, calling the mayor, the commissioner, and everybody else, saying, well, they didn't approve it, and we got a problem now. You know, we need to do our homework up front to make sure we get to get you moving forward. We're trying to get a win-win here, and I think you're presenting stuff to us right away that we haven't had a chance to look at, and.
Because we're doing a building plan review of the planning commission. That's my issue. It's like, we're supposed to be talking about the zoning piece of it, and we're talking about a curb. So I just want to make sure this doesn't make sense to table, in my opinion, but
I think we understand your position. Thank you. There is a motion on the floor to table item 6. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Moving on to item E, new business. Any new business? Hearing none, moving on to item F, old business, the vape shop ordinance. Would like to set a public hearing for the vape shop ordinance at our November meeting. If there's no objections, I'll make a motion to that effect.
I second it.
All right. The motion is to set a public hearing for the vape shop ordinance at the November meeting. Seconded by Mr. Sewer. Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Moving on to item G, open discussion. Any discussion among commissioners?
None.
Hearing none, moving on to item H, I'll make a motion to excuse Mayor Schneider.
Second.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Final item I, adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
We conclude the meeting at 5:39. Thank you, everyone.